My name is Heather Larratt. We're operating Larratt Aquatic for the last 40 years here in the Okanagan. Half our work is monitoring and aquatic research for municipal water supplies in the Okanagan, and half is a combination of impact studies for productivity on large river projects for BC Hydro, and mine reclamation, where we convert pit lakes and tailings ponds into bioreactors that simultaneously produce water treatment and habitat.
And I'm Marta Green, a hydrogeologist with Associated Environmental, and I'll be talking about the stormwater impacts in groundwater and how groundwater can provide a role in the solution. Over the next 10 minutes, we'll be introducing the water issue of contaminants in stormwater.
I'm going to outline the Okanagan stormwater dilemma and hopefully show what's unique to our challenges here in the Okanagan, what's widespread, and what solutions to stormwater have been developed to date to give us a framework for this AquaHacking challenge. Why the Okanagan? Well, quite frankly, we are one of the most water-short regions in Canada, so water issues tend to pop up here first, which is my nice way of saying we're ahead of the curve. Why you? This is a huge problem that translates into lots of meaningful job opportunities. What we fix in the Okanagan will be adapted elsewhere. I'd like to introduce you to the new untreated effluent. Virtually throughout North America, sewage is treated adequately, but stormwater, the distant cousin, not so much. In the studies that we did here, we tested for metals, pathogen indicators, and hydrocarbons, not pesticides, herbicides, or insecticides, simply because it's too expensive to do the analyses. And we found issues with chromium, copper, iron, nickel, lots of issues, and outrageously high indicator E. coli.
So how do these contaminants move into our lakes and aquifers? On the left is a map of the Okanagan watershed. Within this watershed, all rain and snow that falls within these boundaries ends up moving downwards and southwards towards the valley bottoms into creeks and ultimately discharges into our lakes. And for the Okanagan, out the south at Osoyoos into what eventually becomes the Columbia River to the Pacific Ocean. As the creeks descend from the forested highlands, they cross sections of urban or altered landscape where they pick up turbidity and contaminants. Rain and snow that falls on urban environments enter our creeks via ditches and storm drains. This stormwater also enters our aquifers via what are called dry wells, which are just slotted pipe below our catch basins.
Think of the sediments as a storehouse for contaminants. Anything that interacts with particulates or dissolved organics is bound to end up in the accumulating sediments. Just for your reference, the Okanagan rate of sediment accumulation varies between 1 and 5 millimeters per year in the big lakes, with faster rates in the deeper water through sediment focusing. Contaminated sediment sealed off by 5 centimeters or 10 years accumulation in Kalamaka Lake were safe from turbulence if they were deeper than where wind waves would affect the sediments. But now, with these large issues arising, that safe zone has been pushed out into more than 8 meters of water depth. That's with these large new power boats. Disturbed sediments do not drop straight back down to where they were disturbed. Instead, they travel like a dirty stream along the lake bottom into deeper water where, unfortunately, our intakes are.
All right, why should we care about this? Well, almost 25% of BC's population drinks groundwater, and quite a few of those communities are quite large communities, Fort St. John, Prince George, and also Whistler. Whistler gets half of their water from groundwater, and of course, Whistler being quite a tourism attraction, we definitely want to make sure that the water is of highest quality. There are parts of the Okanagan also that relies heavily on groundwater, the South Okanagan, parts of Kelowna, and parts of North Okanagan as well. Groundwater is also important to BC because quite a few farmers have their own wells. Pretty much all of the farming in the Okanagan is all irrigated because we do have those long dry summers. And so agriculture community absolutely relies on groundwater. Uh, Fish can also rely on groundwater because they require cool and clear water to survive over the long summer months. And so groundwater does provide that cool and clear water when there's no rainfall. Aquifers are also pretty useful in drought conditions as we have a changing climate and we have longer and hotter and drier summers. Because groundwater moves so slowly, all of the groundwater that becomes recharged during the spring moves very, very slowly and discharges over the summer months. So in the late summer, when the creeks are running dry, aquifers end up doing quite fine.
We ran aerial and underwater drones in trials on Okanagan Lake and on Kalamalka Lake with similar results in both locations. What you're seeing here in these aerial drone images is how the sediments are lifted. The first set is by a wake ski boat, and it lifted sediments all the way out to 7 meters of depth. The second one is of a standard water ski boat, and you can see the impacts are less. The upper images are instantaneous when the boat has just immediately departed. The lower images are the spreading plume of sediment 3 minutes later. So that's not showing the full spread by any stretch, which takes hours. The large particles will drop out of the water column in a matter of minutes. Sands in a matter of a few minutes. Large, finer particles than that, such as clays and bacteria, are going to take hours to days before they settle back. In the meantime, that plume can have traveled quite a distance. This is where we ran that trial in Kalamalka Lake, and though we really tried not to, we caused a turbidity spike for the South Kalamalka intake, which was several kilometers away, by making 8 passes with one small wake ski boat. It wasn't even the size of the boat that we used in the Okanagan Lake trial. We've created a new problem to meet up with an old problem, which is stormwater. Using wastewater treatment plants in the Okanagan to treat stormwater is simply not an option. There's too much variation in water chemistry and in the volume of water that would be pulsing through the system with storms to allow a wastewater treatment plant option. And we currently have nothing fancier than a few, and I stress a few, stormwater ponds that do detention, some soak-away zones, and the like. But good as they are, these are not currently able to cope. Stormwater impacts are measurable and they are increasing. This diagram outlines existing stormwater treatment options that are available in North America, basically into 3 categories. Stop it from being a problem, treat it once it is a problem, and damage if you do nothing, which the do nothing option is always very favored in terms of upfront expense. So starting with the prevention, we're looking at either capturing that rainwater and putting it to beneficial use, or detaining it and allowing it to soak away and recharge groundwater. In the urban environment, groundwater recharge goes from 50% of the rainfall before development to something like 15 to 20% after development. So clearly we're starving the groundwater, and recharge is important. When we go to something that's more of a treatment orientation, we still want to stay in the family of treatments called passive treatment. In other words, not a traditional wastewater treatment plant. Here we're looking at such options as treatment wetlands, vegetated swales that have trees and shrubs, and all the wonderful bacteria that grow with them. Especially in the wetlands, it's bacteria do the majority of the work. Green roofs, filter strips, treatment walls, which are buried in the substrate and water passes through it before it goes to discharge, and the least favorable option, which is the do nothing, where we inevitably end up with harm to the aquatic habitat and to drinking water supplies. I would suggest to you that the do nothing option is simply not an option anymore.
For groundwater, existing treatment options are, as you can see on the top right, these are called perforated manholes, but we also commonly refer them as dry wells or soak-away pits. So as you can tell, those probably don't offer very much treatment besides perhaps a little bit of settling on the bottom. On the bottom right and top left are what are called infiltration trenches. And these are basically just large areas underground that are filled with gravel or drain rock, and they have a series of perforated pipe to spread the water out. On the left, you can see a bit of a combination, a bioswale using some surface features, including plants that would actually take out the pollutions themselves, and then a gravel soakaway pits. Hopefully the dry wells and the infiltration trenches have some pre-treatment before. And so here is an example of basically the best practice we have today. So there's some centrifugal forces that allow for some separation and some settling of some fines. And then you can also have some filters that remove quite a few contaminants before the water gets discharged to the infiltration trench. These are typically proprietary. You might have heard of Stormwater and the jellyfish system, which is an awesome product, but they are expensive. Stormwater units start at 4,000 liters in size and at a cost of $8,000. So you can imagine for cities that have hundreds of these, that might be a bit of a financial challenge. And also for individual farms and commercial industrial properties, that price range is probably out of reach.
Whatever ideas we come up with as an AquaHacking team, we can't utilize them if they cause flooding or safety issues during storms, when so many bad things inevitably happen. And we have been seeing off the charts weather in the Okanagan over the past decade or so. For example, in the north of the Okanagan, the 1 in 100-year storm has returned 5 times in the last 15 years. Clearly, we need to recalibrate those models, but even more clearly, we need more resilience built into our urban areas, and stormwater is one of the areas of greatest need. There are lots of great ideas out there on the internet, and some of that is the imagery that you see here on this slide. We can use Okanagan Basin Water Board publications, their brand new website developed by Jamie South from my team at Larratt Aquatic in conjunction with OBWB. And this is a place where you can go and look up the large lake data for stormwater parameters. And the city of Kelowna has one of the best stormwater data sets available in the Okanagan. It spans a number of years and I think about 40 locations. And they have graciously agreed to make it available to this AquaHack. I would suggest to you that beauty is pain. I know I borrowed that from a song, but hey, the Okanagan is troubled by its beautiful terrain. We need stormwater solutions that will work in a place that has very limited land supplies and has quite a few steep slopes. And in British Columbia, any retaining for a pond that's higher than 1 meter is deemed a dam and has dam regulations. I like to see this as stormwater reclamation. We really want your wild what you're looking at in this image ideas actually on how to wave on these Okanagan stormwater issues. In clear water, we need to develop a made for the Okanagan toolbox. We need fresh ideas to present this information to decision makers and to the public in our already emergency-soaked bad news culture. What you're looking at in this image is actually a wave looking up towards the sky in clear water, and that's what I'd like to see stormwater be. Either we retain it, we treat it passively, and we definitely do not release it untreated. To register and connect, please see this website, and if you need more information, Yasmina is ever helpful. Thank you. I want to extend a thank you to the founders, supporters, and funding partners. And I would especially like to thank TAC, for whom we do our aquatic reclamation.